Everyone knows of Pablo Escobar's haciendas, his luxury mansions with private jets, waterfalls, and zoos. But all that's left of those is a big population of hippos in Colombia, and some cash barrels buried deep in the jungle. When it comes to El Mencho's riches though, the story is as fresh as it gets. Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes started out as a poor avocado farmer and made it to Mexico's most wanted man.
Tonight, the DEA is offering $10 million for information leading to the arrest of the Mexican drug kingpin known as El Mencho. He's blamed for a flood of narcotics into the U.S.
This also means he's one of Mexico's richest people, but his rise from rags to riches is one of the most violent stories ever told. So let's dive in and see how El Mencho became a billionaire. Some of history's most violent, ruthless, and cunning people came from very poor backgrounds. They grew up feeling isolated and frustrated that they can't have the bare necessities to live a comfortable life. Then, they start craving the money and power that comes with it. Such is the story of Pablo Escobar, El Chapo, and indeed, El Mencho. Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes was born on July 17, 1966 in Michoacan to a family of poor avocado farmers. Michoacan is Mexico's most avocado-rich region, and this is where the US and Canada get most of their much-loved fruit. But Nemesio's parents weren't well off. They could hardly make ends meet, and to them, the only future of their children was also avocado farming. There's another side to the story, and it's crucial to Nemesio's rise to power. From a very young age, he was exposed to cartel violence. A lot of teenagers and avocado farmers in the region were working for cartels to supplement their income, so avocados and violence strangely went hand in hand for Nemesio. When he was in 5th grade, Nemesio left school and got a job looking after avocado fields. However, these fields weren't owned by his family or any ordinary people. They were the property of the Milenio cartel, which was one of the most powerful Mexican cartels at the time. For the Milenio cartel, the avocado trade was profitable in itself, as they often extorted farmers and seized control of their money. But it was also a front for trafficking weed, which they were hiding in the fruit carts going into the US. Nemesio was still a young teen when he became involved with smuggling for the Milenio. This would become the breeding ground for his notorious drug empire, the Jalisco New Generation cartel.
The economical power behind the Cartel Jalisco, they literally started with avocados, so they were farmers. They literally started moving from avocados to chemical precursors to make drugs like methamphetamine. It's like, okay, so what the US market like? They like their avocados from Mexico and their meth from Mexico.
For a few years, Nemesio worked as a plantation watchman and drug trafficker. But when he was 18 or 19, he illegally moved to Northern California, hoping to make even bigger bucks. Once in the US, El Mencho followed the local trends, so he became involved with heroin and methamphetamine gangs. He also started to build his own network outside the Milenio cartel. He would take frequent trips between Mexico and the United States, often under different aliases such as Roberto Salgado or Miguel Valadez. When he was just 19 years old, he was arrested by San Francisco police for stealing and carrying a loaded gun. This would be the first of his many run-ins with the police. In 1989, when he was 23, the San Francisco police arrested him again for selling narcotics. He was thus deported back to Michoacan. That didn't faze him though. He was very determined to get rich. Nemesio and his older brother Abraham went back to California, but before long, they were both arrested while carrying a heroin deal. The police recorded a conversation between the two before the deal. Nemesio had warned Abraham that the deal was a setup, but Abraham didn't believe him. Clearly, Nemesio was smart, savvy, and had what it took to grow his own business. After spending 3 years at the Big Spring Correctional Center, he was deported back to Mexico, and this time, he stayed there. He realized that it was a much more fertile ground for illegal affairs. As soon as he landed in Mexico, Nemesio got his job back with the Milenio cartel, and it was probably around that time that he took his nickname. Now, he was an assassin tasked with protecting drug lord El Maradona. When El Maradona was arrested in 2003, a rival group called Los Zetas took charge in Michoacan. For El Mencho, this brought a few revelations. Los Zetas were a terrifying violent cartel, glorifying torture and offering medals of honor for whoever killed the most people.
They burn these individuals in a 55-gallon drum using diesel because diesel burns slower.
They've had people's heads cut off, thrown into a disco.
To El Mencho, their coup d'etat meant that whoever was more violent was in charge. Also, he was deeply inspired by their unique approach. Los Zetas started out as the Gulf Cartel's army. It was the first cartel army made from specially trained soldiers, Mexican deserters that had trained in the US.
So you had these drug trafficker Osel Cardenas, who rose to the top of the Gulf cartel, and he recruited people from the special forces of the Mexican military. The first Zeta he recruited was Arturo Guzman de Sena. So what you saw was a change in the way drug cartels fought with violence. It was no longer those gang members with shaved heads and tattoos fighting with pistols and knives. It was militarized style, fighting like military units. And once they did it, this was spread across to every cartel in Mexico.
Until Los Zetas, cartel violence was more of a means to an end than a goal in itself. Now, brutality was the main goal. El Mencho would appropriate this style. While Los Zetas were fighting the Milenio cartel, El Mencho moved to Guadalajara, where he struck a deal with El Chapo. In the late 2000s, El Mencho became head of operations for the Sinaloa cartel in the states of Colima and Jalisco. In 2009, the Milenio cartel quickly crumbled after its boss and his brother were arrested. El Mencho seized the opportunity. Well, he barged in and proclaimed himself as the new Milenio cartel boss. Obviously, this did not sit well with the other people who wanted to be crowned kingpin. So the Milenio cartel turned it to two warring factions, La Resistencia, or the Resistance, and Los Metazetas, or the Zeta Killers. The latter was led by El Mencho. To say El Mencho fought dirty would be an understatement. Of course, no one in the cartel world fights clean, but he took it to a whole nother level. He started a smear campaign against the La Resistencia and turned a lot of its members in for extortion. Slowly but surely, La Resistencia was disseminated either by brute force or by the police with information from Mencho. Within a year, El Mencho was the last one standing. By 2010, the Zeta Killers had turned into the CJ&G.
The Milenio cartel splintered over, and one of those splinters was Cartel Jalisco Nueva Generación, the CJ&G.
You might think this is where El Mencho's growth stopped, but this was just the beginning. Now he can make real money. Within a few years, the CJ&G went from being a small territorial expansion to one of the leading criminal organizations in the country. El Mencho did this through sheer intimidation. He learned this from his enemies, Los Zetas. Paramilitary uniforms and weapons scare rival cartels and the police force.
They have a very intelligent strategy, which is basically branding themselves and looking like paramilitary power. They do have their full letters, right? The CJ&G on their vests. They dressed as properly military. They also have these high caliber guns. They have what they call those monstruos, which are really basically like man-made tanks, you know? So their firepower is incredible.
Any money he made from trafficking, El Mencho invested in military equipment.
And in July, footage would emerge of that CG&G convoy. These gunmen call themselves the Elite Group and pledge allegiance to El Mencho. They're armed with assault rifles with grenade launchers attached to the barrel, heavy machine guns, and also this gun. This is a .50 caliber sniper rifle. It's a powerful weapon that the CG&G loves to show off.
Mencho employed the very worst people, violent, power-hungry men who take pleasure in hurting others. His armies terrorize officers and civilians, and his men think nothing of killing people just to prove a point. At one point, El Mencho had an army of evil clowns who flayed their enemies alive. Honestly, it doesn't get much worse than the people that work for the CG&G. And El Mencho is a terrifying figure himself. This is a leaked phone conversation between him and a police officer.
Delta 1.
Hey, ¿quién habla?
Mira bien, hijo de tu puta madre. Soy Mencho, güey. Relaja tu puta gente a la verga. Soy Mencho, güey. Relaja tus putas partidas, si no te voy a partir tu madre y toda tu bola de perros. Te tengo fijado 30 güeyes. Hasta tus putas perros te voy a matar si no te relajas, güey. ¿Cómo ves?
Ya está, señor, ahorita los bajo.
Oh, no cuelgues, hijo de la verga. Te tengo ubicado en Chaco, güey.
No le estoy colgando, le estoy diciendo, ahorita los bajo.
Póngase a las pilas, güey. ¿Qué se le cuesta ser amigo, cabrón? Uno no se mete con ustedes para que se pasen de verga.
No, señor, ahorita yo se las bajo.
Pónganle, mire, revíremeles a todos los hijos de su madre, porque todos agarran dinero y son buenos de puercos.
Sí, es lo que me están diciendo.
Se me ponen a todos, o tú eres el primero que vas a marchar por ellos, León.
So El Mencho doesn't use bribery as much as he uses death threats. The officer knew that if he didn't do as he was told, he would probably find his family murdered the next day. No one wants to take that risk. As a result of El Mencho, Mexico's murder rate skyrocketed between 2010 and 2017. By the end of the 2010s, he was Mexico's most wanted man. The DEA was also desperate to arrest him.
Tonight, the DEA is offering $10 million for information leading to the arrest of the Mexican drug kingpin known as El Mencho. He's blamed for a flood of narcotics into the U.S.
And the Mexican government declared CJ&G Mexico's enemy number one. This is because El Mencho wasn't just targeting rival cartels and officers anymore. He was going straight for the army.
The latest cartel target, Mexico's military. The Jalisco New Generation cartel took the fight to the next level, shooting down a military helicopter with a rocket-propelled grenade.
¿Un dron o qué?
Ese mero.
¿Dónde está el dron?
Está volando derecho arriba.
Hay un dron.
By now, it's not even about money anymore. It's about power. El Mencho has access to the highest-ranking politicians using fear as leverage.
The Cartel Jalisco, they are very well consolidated as one group. And so that means that they can really put up really organized attacks against the Mexican government. And all that violence is only to have leverage in the negotiations with the government, with politicians, right? They create these chaos to go and sit with the local politicians and say like, okay, do you want more or shall we negotiate this stuff?
But the more the government gives in, the more money El Mencho makes. In one final twist, El Mencho returned to his roots, avocados. But he's not a poor avocado farmer anymore. His cartel extorts the poor farmers of Michoacan and sends death threats to their families until they freely offer their farms and earnings to the CJ&G.
All this crime is a consequence of the increase of price of avocado. Now all of this has exploded. The extortion, kidnappings, you have to pay for protection. I'm afraid of losing my family or having them lose me.
Mencho simply followed the trend again. As the demand for avocados saw a huge surge in the US, he infiltrated the trade in Michoacan.
In Michoacan, the avocado industry, first they start like taxing them with like 10% of their gains. And then they say like, why is it not easier just to take over? Give me like the property titles or I will kidnap your daughter, I will extort you if you don't, I'm gonna shoot you, and that's what happened.
So just how rich is El Mencho today? In 2020, Kyle Morey, the head of the DEA team tasked with finding El Mencho, stated that he believed that the drug lord was worth at least $500 million and could also be well worth over $1 billion. And according to government estimates, El Mencho's organization is worth about $50 billion in total assets. One reason for El Mencho's success is his ability to use market and consumer charges to his advantage. Initially, the CJ&G produced just methamphetamine, but as soon as El Mencho saw that consumer demand changed, he moved to heroin production. Today, the CJ&G is known as the core distributor of fentanyl, which has surpassed heroin as America's deadliest banned drug in recent years.
Everything that produces money, they're going to be interested in.
But unlike kingpins like Escobar and El Chapo, El Mencho doesn't flash his riches. In fact, he lives far away from the big cities and is rarely seen going out at all. However, it's shocking what assets he has, or had. According to a report by Univision, authorities took control over a number of El Mencho's establishments over the last few years. El Mencho lost the following to the authorities: luxurious cabins built on a lagoon on Mexico's Pacific coast, more than 100 Japanese restaurants, shopping malls, newspapers, real estate, a tequila brand that tried to export to Europe, gold bars used to launder money, and even a ranch where there were exotic animals, including a Bengal tiger and endangered birds. Wait, more than 100 Japanese restaurants? It's unclear what El Mencho still has today, and in fact, it's unclear if he's even alive as of 2023. In February 2022, rumors started circulating that Mencho succumbed to his respiratory arrest in a private hospital. No one has confirmed these rumors. The mystery could be the CJ&G trying to maintain appearances and power, or perhaps it's the other way around. Maybe rival cartels started the rumor in order to weaken the CJ&G's image. Whichever the case, no one has seen El Mencho for a long time, but even if he's gone, his legacy lives on through one of the most horrifying rise to power stories out there. As always, thanks a lot for watching. What do you think about El Mencho? Are the rumors of his demise true, or were they started by rival cartels? Leave us a comment, and before you go, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. See you next time.